Welcome to the Moonflower Path podcast. This space is for the highly sensitive, the creatives, the earth-loving, the caregivers, the weirdos, the feelers, the change makers, and dreamers of the world. Here, we are all about guiding you to trust your body intuition so you can find home and shift culture. Through the exploration of somatic practice, self-care, and seasonal ritual, my hope is that you will be inspired to be in harmony with yourself and in a dance with the earth. I'm your host, Carolyn, and I'm so honored and grateful to be here with you today. Hello, lovely, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Carolyn. If we have not had the pleasure of meeting, lovely to virtually meet you. If you are new here, welcome. Please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you end up really enjoying today's episode, sharing it with a friend and or leaving us a review. Leaving a review on this podcast is the best way to help show your support. And this is to also speak to the folks who have been here listening for a little while, that if you haven't taken a moment to write a review, I would be very, very grateful if you did take a moment to do that. Honestly, I don't really even mind what you write. It's more just the act that when a podcast has more reviews, it's more likely to be suggested to folks on the app. So very, very grateful for you if you could take a few moments to do that. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to share with you today before we get into our episode. I don't think so. So today's episode is really, it's so interesting. This is such a perfect example of your darkness being also your biggest light, or like the moments that are the hardest bring out like the biggest gifts, or like, you know, like all of those expressions of what is it like the diamonds are created under like pressure or something, I don't know, because today's episode is about navigating the warmer seasons as a highly sensitive person, as a moonflower. And this is inspired, all of these resources that I'm going to share with you, these tips I'm going to share with you, are really have been pulled out of my own experience of finding specifically this summer quite challenging for a few different reasons. So, little kind of disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. I don't often offer a lot of tips and tricks because I don't know what you need. You know what you need. And so a lot of my teachings revolve around offering you the tools so that you can explore attunement, so that you can explore connecting with your own intuition. At the same time, I also recognize that it's sometimes helpful just to be told what might help and then walk away from that with like the list of tips and tricks, trying the things out, and then not feeling shameful if some of the stuff doesn't work, because what that means is that it's just not for you. It's just not something that needs to be added to your self-care toolkit. So I say all of this because I'm very specifically going to offer you some tips on how to navigate specifically this summer as a highly sensitive person in today's episode. But this is just pulled from my own experience and from my own body and from my own intuition. And I know that some of these have really helped and supported the folks in the Moonflower Path community, but at the same time, some of these things might not have. And so take what feels right, leave the rest. And if you have any self-care supports, any tips and tricks on navigating the summer specifically as a highly sensitive person, then oh man, please send them my way. I am like a sponge when it comes to self-care resources. So reach out to me on Instagram, send me an email, hello@themoonflowerpath.com, and let's start a conversation. In podcasts, people always say that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to send you an email or a message. But like, I really do mean that. Like, please reach out to me. This is a community. I love connecting with folks in this space. And I love to have chats about all things self-care. So let's get into today's episode of how to navigate the summer as a highly sensitive person. So there are four focuses for today's lesson. Darkness, stillness, silence, and nature. So let's start with darkness. Actually, no, let's not even start with that. Let's first talk about the ways within which the summer or the warmer seasons might be challenging. So, okay, if we talk about like energetically, and if we talk about cycles, and if we talk about seasons, I believe that there's a few different reasons as to why this can be challenging this time of the year. So if you've been around for a little while, you've heard me say this before, I'm going to say it again. The summer solstice is associated with the full moon. Meaning, if we look at the wheel of the year and we look at the cycle of the moon, we can see that the winter solstice is the new moon at the bottom of the circle. And then moving up to the top is the full moon associated with the summer solstice. And so full moons are associated with abundance. They are associated with allotness. It's no mistake that the full moons are associated with like wildness, you know, like all like the classic, like, whoa, like everybody freaks out around the full moon. Like there's no mistake. Like that's not, like cliches exist for a reason. And there's a few different reasons as to why that's the case in terms of like why the full moon is associated with that time. And if you want to learn more about that, you can listen to the Lunar Living episode, which I'll leave in the show notes. So it's already energetically a full and a big time. So that's one. And two, it's hot. Like it's hot. And we might not be super used to navigating the heat. Some people love the heat. That's awesome. But also some people don't. And I believe that if you're listening to this podcast, that you might be highly sensitive, but you also might just identify as a moonflower. And what I associate with being a moonflower is somebody who actually really thrives in the dark, actually really thrives within slower, softer environments, actually really thrives within environments that are more intuitive, more nurturing, more gentle, more slow. And the summer is the opposite of all of those things. So it can feel like a lot. There's the expectations of other people, right? The expectation that you should really love the summer because that's what some people really like. We live in a world that is built for the like sunny, extroverted, high active, A-type, hustle, do a lot of things, party, go out and be like big and exuberant. We live in a world that is made for that type of person. And so when the summer comes, those types of people are like, yes, here it is. I'm here for it. We're here for it. Now is the time to just have fun. And there can be this sense of like, what is wrong with me? If you're looking at all of that, like, what is wrong with me that I'm not as excited as everyone else? And of course, it's not going to be that black and white. It might be that you like some aspects of summer and then some other aspects you're not keen on or whatever, right? Or maybe there's some years where it's exactly the right fit and the right thing and you're here for it. There might be other years that it's really not, because we are cyclical beings. We ebb and we flow. And so it's gray. But yeah, there definitely is the expectations from others, which doesn't always feel so good. The pressure of wanting to be super stoked about this season, but not being. there's that. And then there's also the busyness that comes along with the summer. The desire to want to do all of the things, because all of the things that we can do during the summer are really fun things. At the same time, you then begin to realize like, oh crap, like, there's a lot of stuff on my calendar right now and they're all really fun things, but I have like no time for myself to slow down, to just be, to rest. And so there can be that internal conflict of like, but I don't want to not go on that camping trip, but I don't want to not go on that walk with my friend, because I don't want to not go to that music festival, because all of those things are fun. But I also know that like I'm going to be drained. So there's that conflict that can come with this season. There's the brightness of it all, the really long days where you wake up and the sun has already been up for a long time. The evenings really stretch out quite long. And for somebody who wants to sleep like more than 8 hours, there can be this sense of like, oh man, like just like the sun is always here, which can be great, but also can feel a little overwhelming. Just the brightness of it all, and the thought like, oh, I should probably stay up because the sun is still up, as opposed to wanting to go to bed and just going to bed. Yeah, it's a fast moving season. It's a loud season. There are a lot of sounds happening. The birds are here, the animals are here, the music is blasting from all ends, the parks are busy, the city is alive. So it can be like sensually, I guess, your senses can feel really overstimulated. So that's a thing. And then, yeah, like I said about the heat, it's really hot, and that can be really stifling for people. After many days of heat around our house, like we start getting pretty snippy with each other. So that's something to have to navigate. And we could just wish it all away and just wish it wasn't the case, but we're here about living in flow with life, right? If you're listening to this podcast, if you're part of this community, I know that you have a desire to not push against the reality of your experience, to not push against the reality of life, but instead try and be in flow with it, to try and paddle down the river, so to speak, as opposed to try and always paddling upriver of denial, of resistance, of wishing things were another way. Well, no, we're here to accept and to be and to navigate within what is present. So that's what I would like to offer you in this episode. So here are my tips. Darkness. How might you incorporate darkness into your self-care, into your life, into your practices? So a couple of the ways that we do so in this community, or that I have done in my own life. One thing is I like to use eye masks a lot more in my practice. So when I'm on my mat wearing an eye mask or using an eye pillow, a lot of the times when I'm lying on my back, keeping the curtains closed at some time during the day when you're just like, no, like I'm good, son. I'm going to keep the curtains closed because I need a little bit of a break from the brightness. Sitting in the closet, making your way into a closet and doing what you need to do in the closet. Bring your laptop in there if you need to work, or bring a book and a little headlamp or something, and sitting in a closet and seeing how that might be supportive. So really offering ourselves an antidote to all of the brightness that is here. Not as a way of, again, ignoring the reality that things are bright and things are sunny here, but just as an antidote, as a balancing out of the brightness. The scales have been tipped such that we are all in the bright season. It is brightness on brightness on brightness. We're not here to ignore it. We're here to just balance it out with some darkness, some pausing, some closing the curtains per se. So that might be something that you could incorporate. And then stillness. So if we talk about a lot of what it is that I like to explore in my teachings is to use the practice of balance to help respond to what it is that you might need. So this is kind of broadening in terms of the teachings here, but if I think about, let's say I'm feeling anxious, and if I think of the energy and the sensation of anxiety, it's a quickening, right? Like if I think like physically in the body, or I guess in my body, I'll use myself as an example. Anxiety can feel like I've had too much coffee and like my literal like body is shaking under my skin. A quickening of heart rate. In my stomach, there's like a swirling, a tightening in my stomach. Maybe in the throat, there is a sensation in the throat or somewhere around the heart, a tensing of the shoulders. Now I feel like now I'm just describing like lots of other emotions. But so we use the example of anxiety. Well, if we think of all those physical sensations, there's a vibration to them. There's a quickening of energy. And so if I were to think, well, what is it that I need to help soothe this anxiety? Not get rid of it, because sometimes it's not the reality, but how to soothe it, offer it maybe what it needs in this moment. I think of the opposite of movement, it's stillness. A quickening of energy, well, the opposite of that would be a slowing down of energy. So moving through whatever type of self-care practice that will help invite in a sense of calm, a sense of ease, a sense of slowing down. Vice versa, in my body, I'm much more familiar with the sensation of depression, to be quite honest with you. So that is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, like a sense of lethargy, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of like a lot of folks who navigate depression sleep a lot more. So that when I see that, that's a slowing down of energy. It's like a slug-like, sloth-like. And so sometimes what is helpful for that, if we talk about the opposite, so to balance out that slowing down, is to move through practices that invite in a movement, moving of energy. These aren't black and white answers. I also really like slow practices. I like slow practices more than quick practices, even though I navigate feeling depressed, but that's because of other aspects of who I am. So we just get curious about it. That's really a lot of what walking along your self-care path is like a lot of trying things out and not feeling like you're doing something wrong if something doesn't work. So if we go back to that theory of using the practice of balance to help soothe something, well, if we think of the summer, we think of there's a quickening of energy, right? I talked about an overabundance and overstimulation. We're busy, there's a lot more going on, just movement in general in terms of like looking outside and being outside, like it's windy, it's busy, the animals are moving, the people are moving. So what might be helpful is to move through practices of stillness. And when I'm talking here, I'm not only talking about yoga. I hope that you know that. I'm talking about just stillness in general. It might mean doing a lot more lounging, or maybe not a lot more, but prioritizing that or carving out some time for that. Stillness in its many forms. Maybe stillness looks like maybe drinking a little less caffeine because that makes you feel buzzy. And like, why do we need more buzziness when the world already feels buzzy? So maybe you're thinking this is like a funny list of tips and tricks, because it's not really tips and tricks. It's more general like energies that you might be able to explore. So what would happen if you were to incorporate more stillness into your days, or not more, but just explore what stillness could look like in your life, and in your body, and in your creative practices and your self-care practices, of taking longer hugs. Like that could be a form of stillness. Like going to your partner or your family or your best friend and taking long hugs. That is a form of stillness. It's even like a form of cultivating presence, right? Of savoring. Why do we need to be moving, doing all the time? Could you linger? Could you pause? The third component, the third lesson, the third tip is silence. So you've heard me say it a couple times during this episode. The summer can be a really loud time. And that can feel really overstimulating, especially for highly sensitive folk, because we just easily do get overstimulated. It's just the reality of the bodies that we have. So maybe shifting the music that you're listening to allow it to be calmer music. Or do you always need to be having music or sounds come in, right? I know that I witness some people in my life that often need to have sound on, the radio on, the TV on, listening to podcasts, whatever. Maybe that's something that's really helpful for you during the winter or the fall, or maybe even the spring when you're really looking to nourish your creativity and you want like lots of stuff to serve that. But maybe not during the summer. Or maybe it just looks a little different. It means when you're driving in the car, what would happen if you were just in silence? It might feel weird at first. It might feel like, no, this is actually not what I want or need. That's cool too. Or maybe it just feels uncomfortable. So getting curious about that. And maybe as soon as the silence enters into your space, it feels uncomfortable because now the buzziness of the mind cannot be ignored. Well, that's when we use practices of mindfulness. We explore practices like meditation. Maybe this is a time to explore what a meditation practice could look like. In the Moonflower Path community space later on in the summer, I'm going to be releasing a bunch of meditation practices. I think I'm going to do some sort of like 7-day journey in terms of cultivating more presence. So if you're a Moonflower member, you will have access to that as a Meadow and a Fireside member. If you're not a member, we would love to have you join. All the details to join are always found in the show notes. But silence within the practice of meditation might feel really helpful, or just blocking out maybe an hour where you don't listen to anything. Maybe it's an hour a day. Maybe it's a full day of I'm not gonna put my headphones in today, or I'm not gonna whatever, right? You get curious about it. And then if it doesn't work and it's not supportive, then don't do it. But you might find a really big sense of relief. And then the last component is obviously turning to the natural world. So this is interesting because we, in the Moonflower Path community space, we have a monthly kickoff call that happens at the beginning of the month. It's called The Grove. And this month, the call just happened a couple days ago, and we talked about the ways within which summer is overwhelming. And one of those is actually the like natural world. Like it's really hot. There's a lot of bugs. And those are two big things that might make us want to not spend as much time outside. So there's like there's the shame in that of like, well, I feel like I should be outside. And then 2, there's the reality that like it's no mistake that a lot of us move through seasonal depression during the winter because we're not getting as much sun and we're not spending as much time outside. And I don't think I need to explain to you the benefits of spending time outside. Like we are nature. So I can't even name all the benefits that we get from being outside. So that can be a real conflicting situation when it's actually really physically uncomfortable to be outside. And then there's also, like I said, the shame. So 1, if we direct our attention to the shame that you might feel about not spending time outside, well, that's a matter of, one, being really compassionate with yourself, and two, getting curious about where that shame is coming from. If the shame is coming from what you think you should be doing when it comes to being a nature lover, as opposed to what you actually want to be doing and what's supportive for you, like you're not serving anyone if you're spending time outside getting covered in bug bites and sweating your butt off just because that's what you think you should be doing. Like it's not serving anyone, right? And sorry, I laugh not out of like malice. I laugh because I've been there. My dad is super outdoorsy in the like outdoor adventure sports type. And so I'm very familiar with moving through unpacking that shame of, no, I don't have to want to hike to the top of the mountain in order to be somebody who enjoys being outdoors. So, okay, we get curious about that shame and we redefine what our own relationship with the natural world looks like. But then the second step, I believe, is, okay, well, how can we actually still remain connected to the natural world in ways that will continue to feel supportive for ourselves? And there's a wide range of ways that you could do that. So I'm not going to pretend to try and even list them all out and tell you all of the ways, but here are some ways that you might do that. So one of those ways is, if we think of the element that is associated with the summer, it's fire. And if we come back to that theory of how can we balance things out when we're feeling an excess of something, an overabundance of something, the element that is opposite of fire is water. So we might try and spend more time in water. Maybe that's outside or maybe that's inside. Maybe you're taking cold showers or you're taking baths that are like lukewarm and you're really letting yourself connect with the element of water. I have a playlist that is called Water Prayers on my Spotify account. If you're on Spotify, just search me, the Moonflower Path. And actually, I'll leave the link of that playlist in the show notes. But that playlist has like sounds of water and like water songs. And I've found listening to that playlist really supportive in times where I'm feeling like way too hot, I can't be outside, but I still want to feel that connection to nature. And so what we're doing here is, instead of pushing nature away because it's feeling like too much, we're pulling from nature the elements that we know are going to be supportive for us. And so connecting with the element of water, and then another way would be to bring the natural elements inside. Pick some flowers and bring them inside. Next time you spend a little bit of time outside, you gather whatever. Maybe you find a rock and you put it inside, and then eventually you put it back outside, right? But how might you try and bring the natural world inside so you're still feeling that spiritual, that energetic, that emotional connection to the natural world without abandoning your needs? So those are some ways that I have found support in navigating the summer. Honestly, the conversation around there being so many things to do and not enough time to do all the things, or it just feels like too much. As I'm continuing to explore this reality, I think that one of the answers for me that I'm wanting to get curious about is, maybe it's not that all of the fun things are the things that are feeling overstimulating and that are taking up too much, but maybe it's the fact that what we do during this season is we add on a lot more than we have created space for. So what I'm talking about here is, there's only so many hours in a week. Are you shifting your work schedule in any way at all during the summer, when you're also adding in all of these things during the weekends and the evenings? And I'm just gonna like leave that there, because I do appreciate the privilege in being able to take time off of work, being able to make shifts in your schedule. That's something that I'm moving through right now. Is like, okay, like something's got to give here, and I don't want it to be the things that actually bring me joy, But if I'm looking at my calendar and I'm not seeing a lot of empty space, does it have to be that I'm creating the empty space and getting rid of the things that bring me joy? Or like, what would happen if maybe during the summer I take time off? And that the time off isn't to do more. That time off is actually to create capacity for me able to do the things on the weekends and in the evenings. I don't know. So that is the last kind of bonus. I didn't even think I was going to talk about that, but I'm presenting it as a possible option. I feel like that's like a radical self-care decision of really untangling our association with work being our sense of worth, right? Like maybe you're allowed to just have fun during the summer, and then all the other stuff maybe slows down a little bit. I don't know. Something to think about. So a little bit of a recap before we bring this episode to an end. This episode, really the why here was to be able to offer you a wide range of self-care tips to navigate the summer as a highly sensitive person. So to go back on the things that I shared, exploring and incorporating things like darkness, stillness, silence, bringing the outdoors in, and maybe taking a little bit of time off this summer, not to do more, but to be able to have the capacity to do the fun things. So really, to like wrap up this entire episode, if there's one thing, like regardless of like the tangible tips and tricks, whatever, regardless of like everything that I just said, if there's one thing that I hope that you walk away from this episode realizing or feeling, is that your experience, your emotions, your feelings are valid. And if you are not a huge fan of the warmer seasons, like there's literally nothing wrong with you. And it's okay. And if one summer you are a huge fan of it and then the next one you're not, that's okay. Your feelings, your emotions, your experience is always valid. And let's always use that to help guide what supports you invite onto your path in this season of your life. So I hope that this feels supportive. I very intentionally wanted to release this episode before the summer came so that you could have an episode you could come back to when you needed the reminder. And if some of these supports are feeling really inspiring and you don't want to have to like do the work to actually incorporate these things into your life, and you would appreciate being part of a community that are doing this together, because really that's like, this is a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about together in the coming months in the Moonflower Path community space, then I would we would love to have you join. And you can do that as low as $88 a month, joining in at the Homestead tier, which gives you access to live stream weekly practices. And there's lots more to be found as you explore the other tiers as part of the Moonflower Path community space. So wishing you a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful rest of your week, a wonderful last few weeks of spring, because we talked about summer today, but it's still spring. And so really enjoy what spring has to offer you for another few weeks. And we'll connect again next week. I've got our first ever interview, first ever special guest in next week's episode. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Sending you lots of love, Moonflower. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Moonflower Path podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn, and ways that you can find more support from me and this cozy community are all found in the show notes. Please consider rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast with a friend. Those are the best ways to show your support for this free and accessible resource. Wishing you a gentle rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting again with you very soon.